This episode of the Mix Minus podcast is brought to you by Big League Pillows. Big League Pillows are customized jersey pillows. You can put your name on it, your number, and you can put a name on the front. There are 5 sports in play that you could pick pillows from: basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer, and there are many variants within. There are 210 different variants you can pick, whether you're talking color or kind of jersey or kind of sport, and they are great. The product is great. Comes with a customized, it comes with its own locker box and a draft letter, and it's great for kids, it's great for adults, it's great for anyone. Just really nice product. We all need something to put our head on when we are watching our sports. That's for sure. So, you could go to bigleaguepillows.com, and if you use promo code MIX- when you are checking out, I will get you free shipping. Free shipping means a lot. You know, that sucker can be $7 or so with shipping on one product like this. So that works out for you, but go to bigleaguepillows.com and get yourself a football jersey, maybe a football jersey pillow, because we have the NFL draft coming later this week. And there's a lot of exciting players coming on the scene. And whether there's licensing for the product or not, you could always pick a jersey that maybe looks like the Browns or maybe looks like the Giants, and maybe put a Barkley on the back of that, maybe a number 2 for the second pick if the Giants do go in that direction. Or maybe you get a Rosen. Maybe you are a Rosen. No one said that you couldn't have the same last name as one of these great players. So go ahead and go do that at bigleaguepillows.com. My next guest is Daniel Parlegreco. I found him when I was looking through Amazon. I tend to look through Amazon to see what books are coming out in the future and use that to see, hey, that might be someone who I will ask to be on my podcast, because you just never know how many books are coming out at any one time about any one subject, and many of them cross over into things I'm very interested in. And I happen to see there was an upcoming draft guide from a DTP draft expert, and that's Daniel Parlegreco, and the middle initial is his middle initial T. I didn't get that, but I did ask him about that, and so I reached out to him with the draft coming up, with New York having 2 teams in play at the top of the draft. Giants at number 2, Jets at number 3. They traded up. Great quarterbacks in play. Saquon Barkley there potentially. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially for the local aspect in New York here with the local football teams. So Daniel, you can find his book on Amazon. You can get the hard copy. I got the Kindle edition. And you can follow him at, let's get his Twitter handle, even though it's probably better if I just go ahead and put it into the show notes. But his Twitter profile is at DTP Draft Scout. He does a lot of good stuff. He covers this thing intensely. I love people who watch the tape as intensely as someone like this does, especially gets in the weeds on college football and watches how offensive linemen are doing at safeties and where they're going to be best suited at the next level. It's a lot of fun. We all know the main guys, and that's fun to even read someone's thoughts on that, because something might go against the grain and it really interests you. But man, getting 300 players deep into a college draft or an NFL draft, but college players, you're breaking down guys from the University of Texas, San Antonio, and South Dakota State, and you're deep. You watched a lot of tape on these guys, and that's what someone like Daniel does. So this was an honor to have him. It was very enjoyable. I love talking shop. I love the future. I love NFL. I love breaking down where these guys might fall and getting our fantasy aspects in play, trying to figure out who we might be able to steal in our fantasy drafts, because it's always hard to prognosticate how rookies will play out, but maybe this helps you get a leg up and a head start. So without further ado, let's jump in. Welcome to the Mix Minus podcast, and we welcome Daniel Parlegreco, an NFL draft expert and the author of DTP's 2018 NFL Draft Guide. He watches a lot of film and provides a well-organized description of the top prospects at all the positions. Daniel, first off, welcome, and what does the T stand for?
The T is my middle. It's actually my middle initial. DTP. It's my full initials. So I've just kind of stuck with that since the beginning. Since I started doing this a few years ago.
It sounds very official.
Yeah, it does. Right? It kind of rang really good when I started doing this, and I just kind of stuck with it.
Awesome. So how many of these have you done now?
This is my third full year doing a guide. Each year it's kind of grown a little bit. I started about 5 or 6 years ago just kind of doing some freelancing and writing on different forums and just kind of posting thoughts about individual players, watching some film, kind of a recreational thing. And it's turned into a kind of a, almost, not a full-time, but for 3 months out of the year I spend, a lot of hours every single day on it from about November to late February. I tried to finish right around the time of the combine this year because I wanted to get my information out before I could get necessarily overly biased based on the combine. I wanted to base my evaluation strictly on the tape, which kind of separates me from some of the other guys. Obviously, the combine has some important things, like official heights and weights and arm length, and some of the times are important when it comes to certain positions. But I feel like when you base things solely on the tape, you're going to be right a lot more than you're wrong. And I think for the most part, the first few years I've done that, and I've tried to specifically focus on the tape. And I think I've been right a lot more than I've been wrong on a lot of these guys that weren't really highly valued by a lot of different NFL draft guys in the past, and I think I hit pretty good.
That is pretty awesome, and I think most of us who enjoy sports and football will watch college football when the big games happen in the playoffs or even the regular season CBS games, but it's a whole nother level when you're breaking down the tape. What got you into this?
I've always kind of been, I don't know, I've always kind of been a draft Nick, and I just, I've always enjoyed the process. I've always liked, since I was a little kid, the whole idea of building a roster, building a team from the ground up. Maybe it takes me back to my NCAA football and Madden days, building a franchise, building a team. I don't know, I've just kind of always liked the whole process and liking the idea that you can build a roster through drafting these young kids and seeing what happens. So I've always liked it, and I've taken much more of a love in the last 5 to 7 years.
And it's probably something that's a kind of intimidating thing where you never think you're the person who could do this kind of stuff. It seems like it's the type of thing, though, as you watch the tape, you've sort of become comfortable with your opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's some guys, it's funny when you watch the tapes. Some guys you get a really quick read on after watching 1 or 2 games, and you really understand the player's strengths, weaknesses. Other guys, you'll watch 10 tapes and you'll say, 3 games, I was blown away by how great he looked, and then these other 7 tapes, I'm like, the guy didn't show up at all in the film, So it's every guy is a different story, is completely different, and you have to just take them one by one, enjoy the entire process, and don't finish an individual player until you feel comfortable.
So you said the word process. What is your process?
So my process is this year. I've kind of refined it over the years. In the past, I've kind of went through mock drafts. In the middle of the draft season, kind of seeing who were the highly regarded the most highly regarded guys were, and just kind of started watching the tape on those guys. But this year I said, you know what, I want to focus solely on the seniors until the underclassmen start declaring, because I don't want to watch all these redshirt sophomores and juniors, and then they're going to decide they're going to stay for the next season, because that's not going to help me and all my guys for this year. So let's focus on the seniors because we know they're coming out. So let's watch them first. Guys that are getting Senior Bowl invites, guys that are going to play in the East-West Shrine game, all the top seniors. So I started with all of them, and as soon as the underclassmen started declaring, I started watching them. And what I did is all the tapes I can get my hands on, I started watching and writing up reports, writing different notes, things I noticed. I would do research on the individual players, taking a look at maybe some of their background, some of their high school information, if they have experience playing other positions, do they have any off-the-field issues. I try to dig into as much as I can each individual player based on the amount of time I have. But like I mentioned, the thing that separates me is I try to focus solely on how I feel the player shows up on tape on a consistent basis.
there's a lot of players in here. I think it was 300 plus or so. How much of the personal scouting you do on these players sticks with you? I mean, there's a lot of guys, and I won't do this and just name some random guy in there, but does your memory almost have like a flashbulb for many of these guys and where we were when you were scouting them, and just little things that almost stick with you intuitively?
No, actually not really, because the fact that you're doing so many people, especially the last few weeks when you're trying to get this guide out, you're going through so many different people. And when you have over 300 names, it's almost impossible to remember. Even when I'm on different shows and things, I like to have my notes, my guide in front of me, because it's so hard to remember all the little things that you do and don't like. And I'm going to look at my guide during the actual draft, like just to kind of give me a heads up reminder on what I thought of the players when I watched them. And that's going to help me, but it's really hard unless we're talking about the top guys, because obviously you hear about those names, you remember kind of what your evaluations were of most of the top guys, but other than that, it's especially from prospect 200 down, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, these kind of things are invaluable. About 10 years ago, I worked in the NBA writing in-house for the then New Jersey Nets, and when we would do the draft prep, that was of course for basketball, but these little guides were they're invaluable, the little nuggets. And I think when you read these the previews even for the different seasons, whether it's Sports Illustrated or other magazines, I love those scout takes, because you can kind of feel it in your guide. It's sort of thoughts. It's like almost tweet to tweet in a way, like little thoughts, and those little thoughts really add up to the whole, I think, and give you a real rounded picture of these different players.
Yeah, absolutely. Every little thing helps. And, some things are hard, obviously, when it comes to tape. Some things are up to an individual's interpretation. Some things you don't necessarily know based on the scheme a player plays in. What is he asked to do by the coaches? So some of those things are a little bit harder to gauge, because you don't know all the fine intricacies of what that individual player is doing, down after down, each individual play. So those things you kind of have to do the best you can, and based on the information you got, to make an evaluation and write down what you feel in your heart of hearts.
Absolutely. As we get into the players now a little bit, New York has a very big focus at the top of the draft board this year, with the Giants having the second pick and the Jets having the third. And there's always kind of this argument that goes on in drafting, whether you're drafting for need or you're drafting the best available. If we're talking best available, who goes first for you? I know you got Saquon Barkley as your top guy on the list in the breakdown, but I kind of felt that you kind of like Josh Allen a bit too. Who goes first for Daniel?
No, actually Josh Rosen I got as my
Josh Rosen, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You're right.
No, it's okay. There's too many Joshes, right? It's one of those things. I think, you don't want to say that depends, but it is kind of a that depends. Do you have your franchise quarterback or not? Because if you don't, I think you got to draft a quarterback. I think the quarterback we know is the most important position. It's gotten more and more that way as we've gotten into the modern day NFL, where if you don't have at least a decent quarterback, you're not gonna compete. So I think it depends on how close the team is. If a team is close and they're in the playoff hunt, they want to be competitive this season, based on the quarterback they have, then I think you draft a guy like Saquon Barkley, because he's going to take you to that next level. He's going to instantly upgrade your offense, both the receiving game and obviously running the football. So I think you go that direction. But if you need a quarterback, you got to draft a quarterback that you're in love with. If obviously every team I think is going to have these quarterbacks a little bit differently. I like Josh Rosen the best. I think he's the best. I think he's the most ready with Baker Mayfield as far as contributing very early on. And I just think he's got an upside. I think he's got everything you want in a quarterback is Josh Rosen. So I would go with him. But like I said, it depends on the team.
Now the Giants, if we look at them, they have a 2-time Super Bowl winning and Super Bowl MVP quarterback in Eli Manning. So they have the quarterback, but he's 37. And I think as a fan, which I'm more of a fan of the Giants, I really want to see Saquon Barkley in the Giants blue. But you also see what happens to teams who don't have a high-level quarterback. I think in the Giants spot, it's especially tough, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I go back and forth with the Giants. My big thing with the Giants, I understand that they do love Saquon Barkley. I think they my feeling with the Giants is it's going to be it depends on what happens what the Browns do, number one. Meaning, what I mean by that is I think the Giants love one of these quarterbacks. One of the quarterbacks I think they absolutely love. And if the Browns take their guy, I think they're going to go Saquon Barkley. If the Browns don't take the quarterback they love, they're taking the quarterback. So I just think it depends on what the Browns do with that first pick. You can make the argument either way for the Giants, whether drafting a quarterback or whether running back. I guess it just depends on whether you feel like they're an NFL, NFC playoff team. Are they going to win that division? Are they going to compete to make it to the Super Bowl this year? If you feel like you're one guy or two guys away from doing that, you draft a guy like Barkley, like I mentioned, because he's going to take you to that next level. But if you feel like, we're not even close, then my thought is, why would you draft a running back that really, as we've historically seen, a running back has a shelf life of about 5 years. So why are you going to take a guy that's going to take so much wear and tear on his body these next couple of years, and by the time you're ready to compete, his body's going to start breaking down? Does that make sense?
It sure does, but and I totally am on board with the running back argument. But, sometimes there's years, and you probably do this scouting, you just fall in love with a guy, and it's hard not to fall in love with the tape on Saquon Barkley. That guy gives you goosebumps.
Oh, of course, man. He's like, I know maybe I feel a little bit differently than some of the other draft guys. I've read some different things, and some guys have liked Zeke better, some guys have liked Todd Gurley better. But I tell you, I think Saquon Barkley is the best running back that I've ever scouted. In my 5 or 6 years of doing this, I like him better than either of those guys, and I'd imagine he's pretty close to Adrian Peterson as a prospect. Just all the things he can do, the explosive nature he plays, pass protection, receiving, the way he can line up and play as a receiver and beat coverage. He's just a rare commodity.
Now the Giants do have a backup that people have sort of loved or hated, I think, in Davis Webb. If you can even think back, where was he coming out of college? I know he kind of came in after Goff, and he had some prolific numbers at Cal. But was he something to get excited about coming out at all? Do we think there's a chance he can do anything? Yeah.
He was an interesting prospect for me. I liked a lot of things. From a physical standpoint, he was very impressive. Had a lot of traits you look for, a little bit raw. Obviously, he played in that spread offense. There's certain characteristics that you feel like you can work with him. From the articles that I've read up there in New York, that the Giants have been very impressed with him in the offseason workouts. A guy that seems like he really understands it and wants it, which are good signs when it comes to your franchise quarterback possibility. So that's gonna weigh into consideration, I think, too. Meaning that if Webb has impressed them enough to the point that they can say, you know what, we're not sure we need to take a guy number 2 overall, then that's only a positive for the Giants. Or maybe they say, you know what, let's give Davis Webb a chance. We got training camp, we got preseason. If Eli Manning doesn't have success early on in the season, let's play Davis Webb as soon as we start losing football games. They can commit to that for a year and say, you know what, if this Davis Webb thing doesn't work out, we're not impressed by what we've seen, the next year, you know what, we're drafting our guy. The question is that going to be, are you going to have a number 2 pick again? Probably not. But if they can hope they can move up in the draft next year, I guess, or they can sign somebody in free agency, or maybe they will have a top 10 pick, because maybe the fact that they don't make the playoffs and Eli fails pretty early on, they will have a high pick, so they'll be able to get their guy. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and I think with the Giants, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this if you're a fan.
Do we fall too in love with the narrative of Baker Mayfield, the guy who walks on and ultimately becomes a Heisman winner for a high-level program, the chip on his shoulder, out to prove doubters? Is this kind of fluffing up his value? You seemed a little bit skeptical, I think, on his ability to thrive in the NFL game.
Yeah, he's the ultimate competitor, Baker Mayfield. 4-year starter there at Oklahoma. We haven't seen a lot of guys. Obviously, Jared Goff last year had some struggles on his first year with the Rams, his rookie year, in that spread type of system, Oklahoma system. Obviously Goff did it in the Pac-10 a little bit different. But, it is going to be interesting because Baker Mayfield, I mean, if you look at the statistics, you look at the big time games he's played in, albeit not against the greatest defenses, but a guy that's had success at the highest level. I mean, even against those a couple of those playoff games he's played in against those big time defenses, he showed up, which is all promising. But the thing with him is he's a smaller guy, not a big guy, not going to wow you with arm strength. He's got the competitive juices. He's he's got the experience. He's got the accuracy. It's just a question if you believe he can physically. He can carry the load for a team, has some concerns throwing the ball down the field. Can he translate that college spreads type of offense into a next level NFL pro style offense, which he hasn't proven he can do yet? So just some questions with Mayfield. I like Mayfield. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite NFL quarterback. I think he'll be a very solid starter at the next level. It's just I think you're not dealing with the ceiling with Mayfield as you have with these other guys.
I mean, are we thinking almost like a last year Case Keenum?
Yeah, not a bad comparison here. Case Keenum had a really good year. That's actually not such a bad comparison. I think you're looking at a slightly better Case Keenum from last season, I think, with Baker Mayfield. Yep. Maybe even another guy that you can maybe compare him to is a guy like Jeff Garcia. If you remember him from the 49ers.
That's a great one.
A guy that's not going to, maybe throw the ball down the field, 40 yards, 50 yards down the field, but a guy that's going to accurately pass the ball, 10, 15 yards at a time, kind of play that West Coast system that I think he can have a lot of success in.
And he'll probably get 3 teams to the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
He won't necessarily stick. So we talked earlier about the 2 LA-based college quarterbacks in Rosen and Darnold. First on Rosen, you liked him. He's a top guy. The record scares me in college last year. Why did he fall off? Is he bored? But are we just missing the obvious that in 5 years we're going to look back and go, how did we not all see this, that this was the guy?
It's a lot of different things. He really had a terrible offensive line. It didn't have a lot of help, but his defense. I mean, in that conference, I mean, nobody plays. Did not help him at all. He was constantly having to, put 40 points up on the board every single game, and he's still losing. So I don't think you can blame a lot of that on him. If you watch all the games, you kind of see that he did everything he could to carry the team. But when you don't have a lot of supporting cast, it's pretty difficult.
On to Darnold. He has almost a mythology to his story, and he seemed to play and scrap to win the college games. He looks sturdy. He seems to command and lead. Do we think he could be exposed at the next level?
Yeah, Darnold is he. I feel like Rosen and Baker Mayfield are the most sure things because of the amount, of time that they've played, a little bit older. You kind of what you see is what you get. I think Rosen has obviously a higher upside than Mayfield, but these guys are going to at least be average to above average quarterbacks. Darnold and Allen, I have a hard time with because the two of them both have the highest upsides, which also means the highest bust potential. I know people don't like me to throw that word around, but the thing with Darnold is obviously redshirt sophomore. He's played 2 seasons, started for USC as a redshirt freshman, started for them. He has games that you just you scratch your head and you're thinking, what is he doing? Sometimes his decision making is just not the best. Similarly to Josh Allen, same thing. Decision making, throwing the ball up in the air in triple coverage. What is he doing? What is he seeing? And Darnold does that all the time. He's got the size, he's got the arm, he's got the mobility. Both of them actually, had the mobility. They have all the physical traits you're looking for, but decision making with both of them is a serious question mark. So that's kind of my concern. Darnold obviously had a little bit more success because he played in the bigger conference. He's played some big-time teams during his career. But there's definitely some concerns there. I think with both those guys, you're going to want to give them some time to learn, give them time to develop, give them time to sit behind a quarterback. That's why maybe Darnold might be a good fit for the Giants, just because of the fact that you can give him a year or give him 2 years to sit behind Eli. However much longer they think Eli has, give him a year or two to sit and learn. He's still only 21 years old, so give him some time, and I think you're going to have something to work with in the future.
That one does feel too good to be true, I think, almost. It's a perfect kind of setup with where the Giants are. Last couple of questions. The other quarterback, Lamar Jackson, his explosion bursts off the screen when you watch him. He's almost a mutant. It looks like he's playing in like a CGI world, you know? But you kind of always, when you were watching him, you wanted him to over-deliver for a Louisville team that was maybe not that good without him. And I think maybe I dinged him too much for the games they lost. But, man, he has so much explosion, so much electricity. He's not the greatest thrower of the ball. I think if you commit to a guy like him, it's dangerous because then you got to kind of commit to a backup who can play in a similar way. But, man, that's a hard one to not you want to touch the stove on that one, don't you?
Yeah, it's very tough. Lamar Jackson, you talk to the kid, you're going to love him. As far as work ethic, all of the leadership qualities, guy that just loves the game of football. Obviously you mentioned the physical traits, the athleticism, all the things you want. But the thing about Lamar Jackson is, can he consistently win from within the pocket, down after down? And that's my concern with him. Obviously people talked about this last year with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson looked like he was going to be a successful rookie quarterback before the injury. But the thing with Watson is, you watch the tape from Watson when he was at Clemson. He can win from within the pocket. Maybe he wasn't. He needed to work on that a little bit, but he was a thrower of the football. He can do it. Lamar Jackson, he's got the Michael Vick arm strength where he'll throw the ball down the field 60 yards, fling it. But what you also notice is he needs to escape. He needs to get out of the pocket. He doesn't consistently stay within the pocket, stay within the hashes, take the ball under center. All these concerning things about him, accuracy concerns, just so many concerns about him as a pure passer. You're going to give your offensive coordinator overtime. You're going to make him work so hard developing an offensive system, game plan for him to have success at the next level. I'm not going to write him off or count him out because of the fact that first of all, he loves the game of football. He's a smart kid. He understands it. He wants to be great. So I definitely give him a chance. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable drafting him as high as I hear him now in the first round because I think teams, fans, everybody's going to expectations for a guy like that, drafting a quarterback with that kind of physical traits. His expectations are going to be off the charts. And from a purely quarterback standpoint, he's not going to be able to fulfill those expectations early on.
Well, and you know what? He might be able to, but only if he's using his legs, like he said. And that's the kind of thing that's dangerous. If he's put in a position early on where he has to produce, he's going to fall back on that. And when you get to the NFL, I know people go, oh, he's elusive, he can't be hit. Well, you can't be hit until you're hit, and one hit can really wreck things in the NFL. And I think you're dead right about the whole Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, anybody who watched him, he was a quarterback. Sure, he could run, but he ran to protect the pass as opposed to kind of fake the pass to be a runner. So, as I said, last couple here, I find the disgust tactic, that people are saying with Cleveland, that they should take Barkley first and then take whoever falls to them at number 4 of the leftover quarterbacks. To me, you were saying you came from fantasy football. We all did. We love that. That sounds like a fantasy football strategy. But I think when your job's on the line, that scares me, especially in a place like Cleveland, where you need to be aggressive with exactly who you want. Doesn't that almost sound like people who aren't really involved in decision-making in football to have some kind of plan like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because anybody that is behind decisions in the NFL will tell you, you got to take the quarterback that you absolutely love. It's not just a question of, okay, we got 4 or 5 quarterbacks here that we're talking about in the top 15 picks in this draft. Let's just take the best one, the one that's available. Teams don't think like that. Teams fall in love with these guys, the amount of work they do on these guys. It's very possible they absolutely love Saquon Barkley, which they very much could. But if they're in love with a quarterback or they're in love with Saquon Barkley, I know maybe the jump from quarterback 1 to quarterback 2 is not as great as the jump from Saquon Barkley to the number 2 running back, but that doesn't matter. You got to draft a guy, the quarterback that you feel is the best quarterback to take your franchise to the next level, and you can't take that type of chance when you have the first pick in the draft that you might not get that guy.
Yeah, it's almost like Tindering for a wife or something. You know, it's like, no, you got your soulmate, you want to know who you're going with, go with them. Defense, cornerbacks. I'm not deep into this, and this is where the guys who watch the tape like you all end up showing much of your wares. But you had a guy, number 1, who I'm not seeing on a lot of mock drafts as a number 1 guy, Carlton Davis in the cornerback level. What did you see there that's maybe against the grain a little bit?
Yeah, obviously I mentioned in my guide, one of the things I'm not privy to with these guys is off-the-field issues. There's been some rumors that Carlton Davis might have some off-the-field concerns, issues, which, obviously I don't personally know about. So that might ding him a little bit. But if you watch the actual tape of the player, the most physical corner in the class. And not just that, the guy can run. Generally when we talk about physical corners, guys like Richard Sherman, they're good athletes, not great athletes, not guys that are going to run with Odell Beckham or, the top athletes at the wide receiver position, but guys that like to, physical you up, rough you up at the line of scrimmage. But this kid can do it all because he's physical. He bumps, he is really tough at the line of scrimmage, won't let smaller guys get off the line. But at the same time, he'll run with the quickest receiver. He can run down the field. He's physical at the catch point. He'll wrestle the ball away from guys, knock the ball out of their hands, strong hands. I just love the way he plays the game of football. There's obviously a lot of corners in this class that are really, really good, but Carlton Davis to me is a rare football player if you watch the tape, and I just loved all the traits that he possessed. But Denzel Ward is, he's no slouch, and I was the biggest Marshawn Lattimore fan, out of any of these draft guys last year. I knew for sure he was going to be a stud. I loved everything about him, and Denzel Ward is on that same level as Marshawn Lattimore, so he is a really, really good corner in this class. And those two guys are both, to me, they're absolute studs.
Are there other players who you've been surprised with, maybe just one or two off the top of your head, in terms of the difference in what you saw with your eyes on tape and what you're seeing from other people who cover the draft?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big guys that I don't see it on film is Marcus Davenport. In the beginning, he was getting a lot of hype. He all of a sudden was getting into the top 10 discussion. I don't think he's at that point anymore. I think the tape has finally started to catch up with some of these draft guys. But, obviously he played at, Texas San Antonio, a small school, UTSA, and just didn't dominate that level of competition that he competed against down there. And to me, that's a little bit concerning when you're playing small school competition like that and you're not consistently dominating with your size, your ability, your skills. And then when he went to the Senior Bowl, it was even more alarming when he went up against guys from big-time college programs, and he really struggled. I just think he's going to need some time, and I think a team, if somebody drafts him in the top 20 picks, is not going to be able to expect a whole lot from year one or probably even year two from the player. I think he's going to need several years to hone his craft, and he's got the physical traits to do it, but I think the talk of him going that high is a little bit far-fetched. Trying to think about some other guys that I think that maybe have their hype has gone a little bit too far. Another guy, Mark Andrews, a tight end from Oklahoma, a guy that put up, I think, about 900 years for Oklahoma in their spread offense this year. I've heard some guys have him as their top tight end, and not at all. I think, he's not even, I don't even think in my top 3 or 4 tight ends in this class. He's a good player, a good receiving tight end, but not going to offer you much in the pass protection aspect of the game. He had a good year this year, but, it doesn't really, hasn't consistently done that. There's guys that are better than him, like Gesicki and Hayden Hurst and Dallas Goedert. Just, he's a good player, but I think he's going to get overdrafted as well.
My last question, I thank you for coming on again, giving us about a half hour. As somebody who watches this much tape on players, one of the most fun parts must be when the fall comes around and you can kind of see them transported into the NFL game. I know you had Carson Wentz there as someone you were really high on. It must have been fun to see what he ended up doing after a sort of down second half to his first year. But who are you most excited to see in the NFL game from what you watched for this year's draft guide and all the tape you watch? Maybe one or two guys who you're just like really excited to see at the next level.
To be honest, I mean, it's really simple. I would say Derwin James, a guy that I've loved since the very beginning of this evaluation process. When Minka was higher, I've always stuck with that. If you go back to my Twitter history, you'll see that I've always said Derwin's the best safety in this class. And I think draft guys finally caught on, media guys have finally caught on that Derwin is just an absolute stud, physical freak, kind of a Patrick Peterson that he can just has all the physical traits you want. He still needs refinement in the football aspects of the game, but he's such a good player. I can't wait to watch him at the next level. And then you know, I would probably say after him, you know, it's tough. I mean, I guess you can go Josh Rosen because I have him as my top quarterback. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. But there's so many of these guys. I mean, I can't wait to see how they all fall.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, I really do appreciate you coming on, giving us some time, going through the draft, and I wish good luck with the continued selling of the guide. You put a lot of work into it, you can tell, and you could tell by this half hour how deep you're getting into this. So thanks again for coming on.
No problem at all. Great to be on.